Ah yes, Christmas time is upon us, a time to be thankful for what you have, a time to give back to the ones you love, and of course, a time to gather around with friends or loved ones and watch your favorite holiday movies. Now before I begin, what are some of your favorite holiday films or traditions? Let me know in the comments down below. But as for me, mine is Home Alone. But did you know that this film spawned several different games on a variety of platforms? So, with the holidays upon us, now is the perfect time to kick off my new series called Does It Hold Up?, where I briefly look at games that I played when I was younger and revisit them to see if they are as good as I remember. So grab some eggnog or hot chocolate and kick back by the fire as we take a brief look at the Super Nintendo version of Home Alone. So where do I begin with a game like this? Well, for starters, this was an early release title for the Super Nintendo. To give you an idea, the film came out in November of 1990, while the game was released on December of 1991. Meanwhile, the Super Nintendo itself in North America launched only several months before that in August of 1991. As I mentioned before, there are many variations of this game on different platforms, such as Sega Genesis, Game Boy, and even MS-DOS, and believe it or not, they each offer their own experiences. However, as far as the Super Nintendo version is concerned, I really don't think it holds up well at all, yet before I get ahead of myself, let's quickly break down why. Keeping in mind the dates I mentioned earlier, at the time, the graphics looked okay and were probably even considered to be impressive at one point. However, if you compare the look of the game to the source material of the movies, I think the game is a bit too colorful. Normally, I'm all about nice and vibrant color palettes that show off the beauty and power of a console or system, but it just seems out of place here. I mean, I feel like I'm playing an interactive coloring book more than a game. Not to mention, what is this? Or this? Or these? Maybe I'm nitpicking, but I almost get the impression that the designers didn't even watch the film. If anything, at least the character models aren't too shabby for the time, so bottom line, the graphics earn my rating of 6 out of 10 stars. They're not spectacular, and the colors are a bit unnecessary at times, but the game itself seems pretty basic, so it gets the job done. Do you hear that? Do you like it? I'm going to take a guess and say that you don't. Now if you do, that's great, but otherwise, it just sounds so stock and generic. Meanwhile, you better get used to it because aside from a few MIDI renditions of songs from the Nutcracker, that's all you're going to get. On that note though, pun intended, the 16-bit renditions of those tunes from the Nutcracker, and even the 16-bit cover of the John Williams Home Alone theme during the intro credit scroll are kind of nice. But that's the best compliment I can give about anything related to the audio in this game. Even the sound effects are bare bones. I mean, listen to the sound this guy makes when you shoot him with a slingshot. I mean, what is that? Oh, and if you suck at games, don't play with your volume all the way up, unless you don't mind hearing an obnoxious, digitized version of Kevin's scream. Actually, you know what? That's it. I can't handle this music anymore. Who is in charge of the musical arrangements anyway? Heck? Well, that certainly explains a lot. You may as well say the music from the game is the spawn of the devil. Overall, the sound clips and the music from this game are very forgettable, and at the end of the day, if you must insist on playing this for whatever reason, you'd be better off muting the TV, putting on your headphones, and listening to something else. So bearing that in mind, I rate the audio 3 stars out of 10. Alright, so now it's time for the star of the show, because after all, graphics and sound aren't everything in a game, it's the gameplay that counts, right? Well, too bad the gameplay isn't any better, especially by today's standards. If you've been watching the footage on the screen, by now you know the game consists of running around a giant yet very linear house, collecting valuables while avoiding some bad guys, and occasionally defeating a randomly boring boss. You rinse and repeat this formula for 4 levels, and then that's it, the game is over. Okay, now first off, I mentioned avoiding bad guys, right? And you'd think we'd get a heavy dose of Marv and Harry from the films, And while they do show up once in a while, what I want to know is, who are these guys? Does anybody know? I don't remember seeing them in any of the movies. They better get out of my game before I pump their guts full of lead. Oh, and speaking of which, the weapons are virtually pointless. I can spend all day firing my slingshot at this random guy here and it will do nothing at all. I mean, occasionally it will make him go, "Ooh!" But that's it. I mean, look at this. Oh, never mind. I guess I can knock him out. I only have to shoot him 500 times. The level of challenge in this game is poor as well. It's basically a matter of trial and error. Also, these bosses are beyond typical. I mean, it's as if they put no thought into the game at all. Well, what should we put over here? Some rats. How about over there? Cockroaches. Oh, and how about we throw in some ghosts for good measure? I mean, I don't recall seeing any ghosts from the film. Do you? However, the worst part about the game is that in hindsight, the amount of gameplay offered for the price was insulting. You see, in my research, I found a retail listing for this game in a 1992 Sears catalog, and it was listed at $60. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's the standard price of games these days, and surely you'll get hours of entertainment out of it to even out the cost, right? Wrong. As far as the gameplay goes, this game is very short. When it was all said and done, I was able to beat the game within a little over an hour. Now, I'm not a financial guru by any means, but I think it's safe to say that that's a very poor return on investment. I mean, sure, it may be fun for about 10 minutes, yet when taking into account the value for the money, I'm going to have to give this a mere 2 stars out of 10. Overall, I realize it's meant to have an arcade-like feel, but there's no real replay value either. Compare this to a game like Super Mario World, for example, which came out before this with the launch of the Super Nintendo. That game is filled with secrets and has a high replayability factor even by today's standards. Looking back, while everything I mentioned didn't bother me when I was younger, heck, I think I even found some enjoyment in the game back then, but today, I would say that it is absolutely not worth it. These days, you can find the game online for around $7 or less, but even then, I'd say save yourself some time and put that money towards buying the film instead. The runtime is longer than the playtime for the game, and you'll get more enjoyment out of it too. So, even though the game looks okay, never judge a game by its cover, because here, you'll only find generic music, unoriginal and short gameplay, bland and uninspired enemies, and bottom line, this game doesn't hold up. That's why my final rating for Home Alone on the Super Nintendo is 4 out of 5 stars. Phew, I think I got a bit worked up there, but maybe it was the eggnog. Still, what did you think of the game? Does it seem like one you may enjoy? Or maybe you played one of the other versions of Home Alone on another console? As always, let me know down in the comments below. But that's it for this episode. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays or whatever the case may be. But I'm That Bald Gamer, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.